And we're live. You're listening to the Hashgraph Enthusiast Show.
Hosted by Brandon Davenport, aka It's Brandon D.
Well, hello, everybody. Another week, another 7 days in the Hedera ecosystem. I hope everyone's doing well. Hope the audio's coming through. As I said last episode, we're still getting things set up. We're still rocking and rolling. The show's growing. The show's improving. But we have hiccups along the way. So if you notice any, let me know. I'll also be letting people call into the show too today. Same kind of vibe as last week. It was awesome having like Brady and Grelf and all that kind of stuff call in. So that was super fun. Awesome. Yeah, I love to hear the audio is working good. Okay, great. I'm always so nervous about that. It's so funny because the show switching to live video. I was an audio only show before. Now it's video, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got to worry about video too. But big week this week. Lots of very, very interesting stories. And we're going to dive into it all. And a few kind of key topics. I mean, the title of this episode is kind of a joke. Is Joe Rogan involved and aware? If people remember kind of the whole BlackRock story and everything about that, the whole meme was like, BlackRock wasn't involved or aware. So I think that's a great meme. It's kind of like brother, what is HBAR kind of thing. But here's the thing. This is the question that is on my mind, and it sounds dumb, but the reality is a lot of people watch Joe Rogan. I think that there's been a lot of people in the Hedera ecosystem that are like, oh, what if Lehman got on Joe Rogan, or they were super enthused about some of the karate combat guys being on Joe Rogan. And despite your thoughts on the show, I mean, it's a huge audience that is really, hungry to learn new stuff. So it's good to see that. We're going to talk about a clip as to kind of why that's the title of the episode, but we'll get to that in a minute. Some other kind of cool stuff that I want to just rip through before we dive into the meat and potatoes. And again, shout out to supporters of the show. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Give it a share. The more, the merrier. I'll be having people call in, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, Hashgraph Enthusiasts is live every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. YouTube, X. It's a whole different vibe now. I dig it. Shout out to No Man. Good to see you tuning in. Appreciate you. There's certain people that have been tuning into the show every episode for years. So that's amazing. All right. So right off the hop, something kind of, interesting that I forgot about yesterday, I believe it was May 28th. Yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of Hedera hitting, 10 billion 1 billion transactions 10 billion transactions. Sorry. And it's hard to keep track of all these, billions and billions and billions, but that's kind of crazy because in 1 year we went from 0 to 10 billion. Okay. And then in, another year, we had gone from 10 billion to, let's see what we're at now. Hedera. Let me see here. Perfect. Let's take a look here. We've got 53 billion transactions. We're going at 1800 TPS, 1900 TPS, which is great to see. But yeah, I mean, the network's chooching along and showing no signs of slowing down. So happy anniversary, 1 billion or 10 billion transactions. Also something else kind of interesting. And again, this is just a hodgepodge of just some updates to get us warmed up, because we are going to talk about the Joe Rogan stuff. We are going to talk about BankSocial, Fit 21, community nodes. We're going to talk about governing council member predictions. We're going to talk about SEALSQ, some breadcrumbs, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to have some thoughts that I want to share on some other things too, but really quick, one interesting observation that some folks made in the ecosystem this week, just in regards to Hedera's social media. And I think a lot of people look at Hedera's social media very closely, especially who Hedera is following, because as far as I can recall, for the longest time, Hedera only followed like governing council members. I mean, that's all I remember them following. I remember the controversy of Hedera following Sony and everyone freaking out, including myself. But recently, folks on Reddit were noticing that Hedera started following Fidelity and some other accounts. And that was kind of cool to see. And then now they're no longer following those accounts. So there's some interesting stuff happening with the Hedera social media account. I mean, it's been kind of a long running thing of like, what's the vibe? There's some cool posts that get deleted or whatever. And we all understand. I mean, I had Oliver, the Hedera social media manager, on the show, 20 or 30 some odd episodes ago. Great conversation. And the reality is that, in Hedera's predicament and kind of their approach is like, they're very conservative. Maybe there's concern about things being misconstrued or whatever. So social media is kind of a little bit wonky. And this is kind of weird. I mean, it would be great to see Hedera following peers and other major brands, like all that kind of stuff, just to get exposure or just to kind of, build those connections in the social graph that is X, but they're unfollowing accounts. So we'll see what happens. But I thought that was just kind of interesting and clearly, send signals. I mean, maybe they were like, oh no, people think we're partnering with Fidelity. Is Fidelity involved in Aware? That's the question. Is anybody involved in Aware? New token listing too. This was awesome to see. Something that we are like, I'll be honest, like the ecosystem is really desperate for, and that I think is kind of a multi-alarm bell situation, like kind of like going off, because HBAR is only available in less than half of the most popular exchanges. And, HBAR isn't really accessible on other networks, DeFi ecosystems, right? So it's great to see centralized exchange listing, such as this, new HBAR listing. We're seeing those regularly. It's fantastic. It's extra good to see the listings on kind of the major exchanges. The best thing that I've seen recently is HTS assets, native Hedera tokens like PAC and SOS, get listed on centralized exchanges. So there's so many great things happening. But the other aspect to this that I just want to highlight on this really quick is like, we need HBAR accessible not just on centralized exchanges, but also in other DeFi ecosystems. Because most likely if you have, let's say, a Solana whale or a Cardano whale or an XRP whale or an Ethereum whale, Bitcoin whale, whomever it is that checks out Hedera and they think it's great, how do they move their liquidity over there? And it's tough if their only option is to acquire HBAR via a centralized exchange or whatever. It'd be so good if if those kinds of similar access points were also in the decentralized space. So still a long way to go. I think exchange listings kind of in general are definitely an area where Hedera is a little behind. But I have seen an uptick in exchange listings. And I mean, the HBAR Foundation's working away on that. So I think that's important. And a great comment here by Melton. I mean, that's exactly what I'm saying is, even just throwing names out, Kraken, right? I think Kraken is like literally sponsoring Karate Combat. So like, Hedera should be on Kraken exchange, like literally. So that's what that's kind of a gripe of mine, I guess, when it comes to Hedera, HBAR, that kind of stuff. But besides the point. I kind of mentioned I was going to get off of griping. Well, maybe I'll gripe one more time, and I can't promise this will be the last time in the episode, but probably one of the saddest charts I've seen is this vibe right here is the staking rewards rate for HBAR. It's fallen below 0.3% for the first time. And as people recall, when HBAR staking launched, it was at 6.5%, and we were rocking. That was temporary. Then it was capped at 2.5%. There was a little bit of controversy at the governing council. Lehman's proposal wanted more allocation going towards people staking. The governing council didn't, yada, yada. So really it's kind of like, right now, Hedera, when it comes to getting yield on the network, it's really like you've got liquid staking with Stater. That's subsidized by the HBAR Foundation. You've got all sorts of other things, like you've got Dovu staking, you've got SAW staking. I really think that DeFi, that layer up, is just really killing it. So, and also too, Lehman Baird said, maybe in the white paper, I can't remember, but staking isn't supposed to be like a huge reward anyways, like native staking. I mean, the people staking aren't really doing a whole lot. They're not performing any kind of crazy action. So I don't think staking rewards on the network are going to be like insanely high, but under 0.3%, that's pretty, gotta be honest, bums me out a little bit. Now, this is not something that bums me out. This was really great. And I've been chatting with Ash from Swirlds Labs on this for a while. We've had conversations, also in the, NFT working group, that I talk about on the show that I'm a part of. We're actually, I believe today we should be pushing HIP 920 to final release. So it'll be an official HIP, music metadata standards, super awesome. I've got clips talking about it. So if you want to learn more about HIP 920, go check it out. Go check out those clips. Got a lot of clips on YouTube. But anyways, talking to Ash at Swirlds Labs, and there's a toolkit that he's launching. And this is really, really great because this covers, I think, a few blind spots, and it's also open source. So you can take this tooling and kind of integrate it with your own platforms and tools, and like all these different types of things. So there's an airdrop list verifier, a metadata validator, which is important because if you're creating metadata for your NFT, you want to kind of know, like, is it compliant with HIP 412? This is something that can validate that and make sure your metadata is all good. Rarity inspector, token holder list builder, risk calculator, which is, I think, one of the most interesting ones, where you can actually go in, enter in a token ID, and then you can calculate the risk score. So it would let you know what keys are on the token, what's the risk associated with those various keys. And you can also just kind of configure one here to kind of see, like, what would the risk profile be for an NFT I want to mint. So that was really great. So shout out to Ash for that. I think that's, fantastic. And we need tooling like that in the ecosystem. And I also know when it comes to NFT stuff, like HashPack's doing great stuff. Kabila's doing great stuff when it comes to just tools for creators. And also, of course, we got Centex, and we've got a bunch of like the creators as well. Like the NFT ecosystem, I think, has not been neglected, but I think that it has kind of hasn't had the spotlight on it quite as much, I think, as it should be. I know that NFTs aren't the main narrative right now. Like, people are talking about DeFi and real world assets and DeFi and all these different types of things. And DeFi is a major focus for the Hedera ecosystem. But again, it's not like NFTs are not going to have another wave. And we can't wait until the next NFT wave to start building out this stuff and enabling these types of things and supporting creators. It's like, now's the time to do it. I see, Frank D. Gods on Twitter, like tweeting out and like freaking out about stuff. So it's the cycle's coming again for NFTs. So if you haven't been keeping up with that, check it out. Now, really quick, I just want to say, let's have some people call in. This is different with the show. I'm going to talk about some more stuff, but just really quick, hashgraph.news/call. Type that in on any device, mobile, desktop is better. Make sure you're using headphones. But the show has been on Twitter Spaces for a long time, or X Spaces, and it was audio only, and that's whatever. So this is a little different, and it really makes calling into the Hashgraph Enthusiast live show more accessible to people everywhere. And I know that there's a lot of people that I want to talk to that, let's say, don't use Twitter a ton or aren't super familiar with Spaces, calling into the show this way feels the exact same as like a Zoom call or a Google Meet. It's very, very easy. And you get video, and the guest could maybe share their screen or whatever. And, you know, I do interviews on the show, but I'm changing the way I'm doing interviews. Like, I'm not doing a traditional interview. I'm just, you know, having people call in to talk about the news, not necessarily pitch their project or go deep on an unrelated topic, but like what we're talking about today and all these types of things. Like, hop on the show and talk about it, and share those insights if you have any. And really anyone can call in. And I mean, apologies in advance if, you know, that the convo isn't, you know, doing it. I might have to boot people off, but opening it up more, and I think like having less of a gateway to the show, I think is going to be exciting, potentially, you know, dangerous, but we'll see. I like a bit of danger, but yeah, hashgraph.news/call. Jump into the show. Let's chat. Let's talk about the news. And yeah, share what you're working on, share what's happening. So one thing that I wanted to touch on really quick was something that I think is exciting, but I agree with many people that it lacks nuance. And I just wanted to touch on it for people because it's a metric that we see a lot that can definitely be interpreted as like not really important. So this is really cool because, you know, basically when we look at developer activity on Hedera, you know, wow, developer activity is up, and, you know, how does it stack up against other networks? Okay, wow, we're, you know, number 2 or number 3, fantastic. So this is DeFi Llama kind of tracking developer activity and, you know, who has the most, you know, development activity. Well, how is that gauged? So really how it's gauged is updates on GitHub, right? So if you look at these 12,000 or 2,500, like these are kind of like when you're on GitHub, which is the kind of software backbone that all software is created on. Hedera is created and developed on GitHub. And so when a developer maybe updates like one word in a piece of code and, you know, hits it to go to the repository, that counts as one. So if you're pushing an update that has like thousands of little tweaks, that can contribute to it. So maybe the spike here was due to another story we're going to talk about, which was the mainnet update, maybe. But this stat is interesting because yes, it does show like development activity on the network, but it doesn't really clarify like how many people are developing on the network or what kinds of updates are having on the network. So it does indicate that there is a lot of activity on Hedera, but I mean, I don't put a ton of weight in this stack because, you know, I think that it doesn't really tell us a whole lot. It just gives us a raw piece of information that I think you have to use this alongside other information to kind of determine what the developer interest is, you know? So, that's my take on it. I think that it's important, but you know, it is what it is. Yeah. Big Man just sent a comment here, and also like folks watching on X, leave a comment. I want to hear people's thoughts on X on the stories we're talking about. But basically would be nice to hear from some of the people who are active on Hedera Reddit to call in. That's exactly why I'm changing the show to this way is, not everyone's on X, you know, there's people on LinkedIn, you know, they're poor, God rest their souls. So I want them to be able to call into the show. And speaking of that, we've actually got a guest now. Patches, I'm going to bring you up. You are at Consensus. You are rocking and rolling. And yeah, I'm really curious as to like, what's the vibe out there? What's going on? How are things going out at Consensus?
Yeah. This is the first time, long-time listener, first-time caller. I've never gone to hashgraph.news/call before, but that was slick. This is a man. Cool. You're a professional now with the whole, you know, you got the puppy in the background, you got the nice camera angles going. You can call into the show. I don't know. This is like Larry King level production value here.
Hey, hell yeah, let's go. Joe Rogan, I'm coming for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's going on out there? What's the vibe? I'm curious.
It's good. Yeah. So I got in Monday morning Had a great dinner last night with the Hedera team. And then this morning went over to the convention and thought I had a early shift, but I didn't. So I was up early around and one around the conference. It's really cool. So the way that consensus works is the first day is like kind of VIP day, and then the next 2 days are general public. So today is when it's not as crowded, but there's a lot of really good conversations happening. So I was over there for 2 hours, walked to all the booths, and got to go to a really good RWA talk about the future of tokenization and people just discussing how like Circle and BlackRock are approaching it. And yeah, so the vibes are there's a lot of DeepIn, there's a lot of AI, and there's a lot of RWA. And so all the buzzwords are being covered by all the booths. And Hedera's booth is right next to Google's, which is pretty great. And it's in between 3 stages. So a lot of foot traffic. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of the conference, letting people know about what Hedera's up to.
Yeah, Hedera has never, like, especially recently, hasn't been slacking on the like booth placement. Like at ETH Denver, it was like, again, like right on the main thing. But something that was interesting was there was that photo that you posted. Maybe I'll bring it up here in a minute, but that photo you posted of you and Justin and Lehman, dinner with the boss. Like, what was going on with that? What was it like? Can you share anything that was discussed, or was it just kind of like hanging out with the old boss?
The old boss. Yeah, it was very, very cool night. I think, oh God, I'm gonna mess up the name. It's like I'm the worst with remembering names, but it was hosted by the night was hosted by Google and I think like On It or Go For It or Send It something. I apologize to who hosted it. It was a great dinner. I'm not good with names. You put me on the spot.
That's okay.
But it was great. So the whole Hedera team was there, and it was I got to sit next to Lehman. That spot was open. I got there early enough, and then Justin, in the photo was there, and got to bend Lehman's ear on a bunch of stuff for hours. So it was really, really awesome time. He's a super nice, kind person, very, very smart. Started bouncing some ideas that I have for tokenization and some other hips that I'm ready. So it was really nice, nerdy way to validate some of my thoughts on what we should do with tokenization. And it was really cool just to kind of get to know Lehman a little bit more. And the whole night, there was Mance, there was Sarah, the new CMO was there. Just kind of the whole team. It was about 15 to 20 people, depending. Eric was there, the new CEO of Swirlds. So it was very cool night. Very good way to kind of spin off the week where you just get everyone together and have just catch up as human beings. And now we're out there, marketing Hedera to the masses.
Right on. I dig it, man. And so maybe what I'll ask now is, obviously it's the very beginning of consensus, but based off of what you're kind of seeing right now, like maybe it's really hard to kind of predict what's going to be happening at consensus, but like based off of who's there and kind of the energy there and what the focus is. And like you said, AI, RWA, those kinds of things, like maybe in comparison to last year's consensus, like what do you really think is going to be different about this year's consensus? Is it the standard, like, oh, it's bigger and better, or are there some more interesting aspects, do you think?
I think the conversations just change, and the backdrop of the market is always there. So the fact that we're not in a bear market, decidedly, and rather we're in a bull market, arguably, is a different backdrop. I say, BTC hit a new all-time high. We're in a bull market. Like that's how
true.
I judge it. But ETH ETF gets approved. I don't think we're going, down. But I don't speculate on price. I'm really about the tech, and that backdrop is there, where there's a little bit more room for innovation. I think just because there's more capital in the market, and there's a lot. I think people in that one RWA talk I was talking about, they were going over 2015, they were going over 2017 of where you had the ICO craze and people were tokenizing things, but it wasn't particularly vetted out. It wasn't enterprise ready. It was the first dipping of the toes, and they were just discussing how this feels like we are in a vetted out market now. where there's a lot more clarity, at least externally. We're starting, with Fit 21 going through the House, the bill, and the Ethereum ETF being approved, which arguably makes Ethereum a commodity over a security. All of these things are great for regulatory, and then with regulatory access and understanding, more clarity, the ability to tokenize bigger and more expensive assets inside of a U.S. regulatory system is there. So with that backdrop, with DPIN, with RWA, I think people are more excited about the prospect of what capital they could access through tokenization. And I think that's where a lot of the focus is. And then you just slap AI onto anything where it's like, okay, well, we're not a market maker, but we're pumping AI into it with tokenized assets and securities as its background or something. So I think there's a lot of exploratory innovation with more regulatory clarity, so it just feels better.
Gotcha. I dig it. And then just while I have you here, I want to get your thoughts, because one thing I want to talk about really quick today is I was curious to see if you had any insights, or it was in your kind of wheelhouse, the recent update to mainnet. Because I got the sense it was very much like a really substantial update, because I from what I understand, they essentially modularized all of the different Hedera services and must have rewritten a large part, if not all, of that code. And I know that I was, just before I had you on, I was talking about that graph that people were sharing that shows Hedera has 7,000, developer activity or whatever it is. And yeah, exactly. It does feel like that update, and they did a blog article for it. I was just curious if you had any kind of thoughts or insights on it, or in regards to how much significance do you think it has on Hedera's roadmap?
Yeah, I think a good way. So if you're an engineer, I think the easiest way to say it is okay, so you refactor the code base, and it's much easier for people to participate in. Is, I think, the easiest way to really go through it. So if a community member would want to do a pull request on a services, it's much easier and much more accessible. And that's definitely a want of the Hedera code bases, for more community members to start interacting with it. And so this update in the refactoring made it much more accessible, where you don't have to fundamentally understand the end-to-end of everything in the code base, but rather with the modularity of the services, now it's easier to piecemeal some section that you're engineering, or you want to enhance, or you have an idea for. And so it's a little bit about accessibility. It's a little bit more about readability. And then with that comes more velocity on being able to contribute internally and externally, because now in a more modular code base and a more refactored code base that allows both of those things, you don't have to. Yeah, I guess if you only have to care about this little piece of code here, and it'll plug into the rest of the code, you don't have to think about the entire rest of the code to make sure that your little piece works. So that's Gotcha. I don't know if I'm explaining it that well, but it is a really big deal. And I think those 7,000 commits do come from the refactoring of all those services. Speculation. I don't actually know. I didn't look at it.
Yeah, but that makes a lot of sense. And essentially what you're saying is this makes, in some pretty dramatic ways, Hedera easier to interface with for developers, in such that you're not worried about, if I hit this button, is it going to impact this thing here? It's that pressure's taken off, and you can kind of sandbox it and be I'm just building within this particular service. I don't have to worry about how it potentially impacts other areas of the network. That's pretty huge.
Yeah. And then again, the internal velocity of development should be higher, because it's faster and quicker to modularly add something, rather than make sure your monolith code is all working once you add something.
Gotcha. And then just a last thing I had for you was something that's on my mind right now. And I guess it's because of that Fit 21 crypto bill. And there was a great post that was shared by Brady at Bonzo Finance. And I can actually just pull it up here. But basically, what Brady was chatting about was kind of okay, here's this section for the bill. And this is no person can prohibit any other person from using the system in any way. The prong one of obviously the test. requires protocols not to have admin censorship power. So he's saying, community nodes / permissionless nodes needed. Do you also kind of see that sense of urgency for like getting those community nodes or permissioned nodes kind of like online? And do you see some of the development activity, such as the mainnet update or some other things we've seen kind of, leading to like, community nodes could be coming? Because I know they're slated for Q1 next year or something, but I'm getting the sense that they're becoming a higher priority.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer.
Yes.
So preface that. Not a financial advisor either. Just go throw that in.
Yeah.
There's two ways you could read that. You could also read that it's just about not restricting the proxies because it is a decentralized DAO of consensus nodes.
Gotcha.
You could say that you need community nodes. I think I would probably take a step back and just say what was just put to mainnet, the modularization of the code base will also simplify the ability to add community nodes. That's a step in that direction. Right. And then if you tell me it's Q1, slated for Q1, then that's probably the thing it's slated for. I'm in my position. I'm not really in the community node section of the tech discussion, but I think again, this major mainnet release, which also had the metadata key, which is pretty great.
Yes,
is a good stepping stone towards getting to community nodes.
Amazing. Yeah, and I mean, that's another thing is that we kind of grazed over was HIP 657, the metadata key like that.
It came out on huge. The worst day. It could not have come out on a less like it's like big news, and then like when there's like major news and giant major news and super giant major news on the same day, it's like it came out.
It's funny though. It's a good problem to have. Like when I had King Solomon on the show recently, and I've had people reach out to me on DMs like, "Oh, I'm doing a Spaces at the time of your show. Sorry, blah blah blah." And it's just like it's that exact same thing. There's just more things happening, more big things happening, and it's like there's this new problem in this community now where we're like, oh no, there's two things happening today. It's it's like it's very funny to see that in the ecosystem of like, wait, no, hold on, it's too much. But it's true. It's like that's what really drives that growth is like that's that energy, that's that momentum. I think that's really attractive to people on the outside.
Yeah, I think you just got to accept that it's everything all at once sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. There was like multiple things that waited years to happen, just all happened on the same day.
It's so true. That's the law. It's like if there's things that have been in the works forever and people are waiting on them and you got 6 of them, they're all going to be deployed on the same day. It's like that's the law. That's the rule.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a good day. It was great. The pack token drop happened, I think that day. What was it? It was something else. There was like three things.
Oh yeah, it was a
mainnet update, pack
update,
token,
something
metadata
else.
key.
Can't even keep track of it all.
Yeah, so many good things. I don't remember them
all. One quick note on the pack token was like HashPack shared some numbers and they distributed, what was it, 155 million pack to 13,000 accounts in 17 minutes for $5.
Right.
Like that's pretty wild.
It's great, and that's. I feel like that's really where we're starting to get to, and we need to continue to get to show is that we can talk about stuff all day in a room. We can point to the theoretical limits. We can show the TPS of what Atma is doing. But what really helps, all those things are great. All those things are needed, and we do them. But when things like HashPack doing a real world use case of distributing a token that can one-to-one be compared to other networks, that's great. Anytime Hedera is being juxtaposed to any other network, the usability, the access, the costs are put on display because now it's a one-to-one comparison. And that's not typical for Hedera to have either because our ecosystem isn't as big. We're just getting lending protocols on chain, or if it's just it hasn't happened yet, or people aren't talking about it. Like people do really cool stuff and then don't make really good concise tweets like HashPack. So it's great to see, and again, it's great to not have just Hedera talking about Hedera, Swirlds Labs talking about Hedera, but rather community dApps that are building, that are showing the valid stats of something that juxtaposed to any other network is impossible. or very difficult. So it's just really great to see, and I super pumped. It only cost them $5. That's great. That's a great airdrop.
Hell yeah. And then, so the other thing at Consensus is like, May, CEO of HashPack, is fighting Karate Combat. Are you going to the fight?
I am going to the fight.
Hell
and
yeah.
I'm just gonna let you know I have to drop off in a couple minutes. I gotta go over to the booth. Yes. Very excited for that. I'm not really like a MMA guy. I think that's pretty obvious. So I like watching music and sunsets, but very, very excited to support May. And she's a trained fighter. I've seen some work in the booth last year at Consensus. She actually showed me one of her fights on YouTube, and it's really awesome to see her be in such a televised fight, and it's gonna be a fun time. Yeah, I'm excited to watch her win.
Hell yeah, that's awesome. Well, appreciate you coming by, man. Was there any last little shout out you wanted to give or anything people to check out? Any updates?
No, not on the spot. Just there's more cooking. If you're a developer in the ecosystem, keep cooking. It really does feel like there's a lot of pressure happening where it's just going to snap up, and we're going to have a lot of adoption. And that's only done through the community, through continuing people like you getting the word out in very high production value ways. And just, keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it. And I think this is going to be really nice in the next 9 months of just people realizing the power and the technology that Hedera is building and starting to utilize it in a way that we've kind of been speculating for years. That's the hope.
Hell yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, have a great time. And if you're at the booth, feel free to call in again, say hi to some people. And man, it's likewise to yourself, like the stuff you're doing. It's just so awesome to have someone from the community at Swirlds Labs and everything like that. So huge shout out to you and all the stuff that you're working on. It's just incredible.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Cheers. Take care. All right. So awesome stuff. I always love catching up with Patches. Patches at Swirlds Labs, the hip man, working on all sorts of cool stuff. The tokenization, something. I was trying to think of a word to rhyme with that. But yeah, Pack token, huge. Mainnet update, huge. Those are actually, it was awesome having them on because I got through a couple of the stories I wanted to talk about. I think that's one thing that I love about this show and having people call in is like, as I have a guest on, I can kind of just like, hey, I have some news here that maybe I'm not super knowledgeable in, like maybe we can chat about this, and learned a lot about that mirror node update and the Hedera services update. And for people unfamiliar with that, just a little bit more information on that is there's an article, there's a blog article. I shared it on the screen earlier, but there's a blog article that Ed Marquez wrote that kind of breaks it down in a really great way that makes it a lot easier to understand. So I'd say definitely go check that out, and shout out to Ed with the educational content. I think that stuff is super, super important. Okay, so let's quickly dive into, let me see here. Oh, another thing, just talking about graphs and charts and, growth and all that good stuff. There was an interesting post from the HBAR Foundation that highlighted some growth that was very, very important. Now, for people unfamiliar, and, of course, Hedera has a bazillion transactions and all these kinds of stuff. A reminder that not every transaction is worth the same, right? Like Hedera consensus service transactions earn Hedera a tiny, 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 tiny amount of money, barely nothing. And those are the transactions submitted by Atma. Those encompass, 98% of the transactions on the network. Other types of transactions like smart contract transactions or crypto transfers or whatever it might be, those earn Hedera much more in regards to fees because those transactions are more expensive to submit to the network. And the Hedera smart contract service is one of those. It earns Hedera a lot more money. And we've seen the average daily transactions up 340% quarter over quarter. And the average daily active addresses up 312% quarter over quarter. So what that tells us is not only are the smart contracts being used more, but there's also more smart contracts. So this is important. I know that this is a big debate in the Hedera ecosystem of, why use smart contracts when we have native services and we've got stuff like H Suite smart nodes and all these kinds of things. And the reality is right now, Hedera really needs both. We can't be in a position where we just shun, effectively the entire crypto industry, because all of that is run on smart contracts. That's essentially the crypto industry. And so I think that it's great to see this growth on Hedera. And I think that you really have to have both. We have to have native protocol level smart contract replacements, but we also have to, focus on that growth of smart contract usage on the network, because that's how people get into the ecosystem. That's how they can port their applications and stuff. That's what we're seeing. It's making money for Hedera. That's what we need, to be honest. There were some other cool posts shared by Hedera from Consensus, just really quick. These were kind of cool. We saw the post from Patches of his dinner with Justin and Lehman. I don't know why my screen gets blurry when I share my screen. I'll have to work that out. This is showbiz, baby. So they're doing a few different talks. I think, what is this? Yeah, this is today. So the schedule for today at Consensus for Hedera is there's a talk that BankSocial's doing. There's a talk that the Swirlds Labs CEO is doing. There's a meetup. And then there's another talk by Swirlds Labs product marketing manager Devin, shout out, and alongside some other folks on a panel. Sonia's there from Orbis. So good stuff. So Hedera looks like they're positioned to have a strong consensus. And there was a photo posted. Let me see if I can find it. Just on the topic of consensus of May, CEO of HashPack. This is freaking awesome. This is May at the weigh-in, the official weigh-in for Karate Combat with the HashPack top, ready to roll. This is pretty crazy because I love this. By the way, this is why I love this show. Big Man. He thinks it's normal that it's blurry at first because it's testing what bit rate and resolution you're connected. That's probably it. Like, to be honest, this is why I love listeners and watchers of the show, viewers of the show, coming in with the knowledge. But anyways, May is going into the Karate Combat pit. We're going to be rock and rolling. A few other quick things, just before we dive into some kind of meteor stories is, India did their first blockchain-based election, and this was leveraging ITT Madras, who is on the Hedera Governing Council. This was really cool to see. It's built by the Plendlome technology, and it leverages Hedera. So this is a election that was using Hashgraph. And this is something that people have been talking about a lot in the crypto space in general, how blockchain, whatever the network is, like any network would be better than the systems in place for elections currently, just even in regards to efficiency or ease or whatever it might be, never mind security and trust and all those different types of things. So that was very cool to see. And I think, like many have said, so much innovation is happening in India and a lot of these other economies outside of America, because as we've seen, the US and up here in Canada too, the regulatory clarity, the supports, the whatever it might be, it just isn't very conducive to the crypto industry right now. And there's many other countries and economies that are really doing some awesome stuff and seeing some really big developments. And it's like in India, hey, blockchain-based election. I love to see it. Also, too, I want to give a quick shout out to HBAR Bull. A quick mention. HBAR Bull has done like a ton of interviews. And he does a lot of interviews with some pretty high profile people. And he just put together a repository of all those interviews. So instead of having to go back and watch a whole episode, he's clipped out a bunch of the interviews he's done over time and put them up on YouTube in a playlist. So a great resource. I'd say go check it out. A good refresh. And yeah, I've been kind of doing the same thing with some clips as well, but I love to see that content from HBAR Bull. Also a shout out again to viewers of the show and fans of the show. I can't do it without you guys. I mean, things keep improving, the show keeps growing. And, I think that, you know, it's only possible because folks send HBAR to a wallet to the show and I sell it and buy stuff for the show. And, it makes me able to kind of do things like this, which is really fantastic. So I appreciate, everybody, that supports the show. Literally could not do it without you. It would not be possible. So what we'll do, and I think there's 150 people watching on X and elsewhere. So shout out to everybody tuning in. I really appreciate everybody tuning in. Let's talk about Joe Rogan and karate combat. And in general, just before we dive into this, is I have seen, and I don't know if anyone shares this opinion, and I'd encourage anyone to kind of call into the show, hashgraph.news/call. But influencers, and when I say influencers, I mean, we've seen so many on X, kind of it feels out of nowhere, just like start talking about HBAR, start saying like HBAR is going to $1, going to $10, HBAR is going to be in the top 5. And all of these kinds of things that you could easily brush off as, you know, hype or whatever you want to call it. But I mean, it's good to see. Like, this is the kind of energy, and I know people might call it shilling, or I know people might call it whatever, but the reality is that the touch point for most people to discover a crypto is through these types of influencers that have the wacky thumbnails and the videos and stuff. And largely, I have a lot of respect for influencers that, even though the content itself might feel a little lowbrow, it only feels that way to someone like myself, maybe, that's been in the Hedera specific ecosystem for so long and understands all the nuances. Maybe the video to me feels a little obtuse or whatever. And I'm like, oh, the thumbnail's weird, or Hedera, you know, can't go to $10 this year, blah, blah, blah. It's like the real practice here for HBARbarians is like, really embrace this stuff. Like, these influencers putting out these videos are really going to be doing a lot of legwork for our community. Like, we really have to embrace these people and focus on doing things that maybe has been a challenge or a problem in the past, which is making sure they have totally accurate information, making sure that they're, you know, being supported, all these different types of things. And it's very clear that some influencers are not going to be great. So whatever, but largely at this point, Hedera really needs to take what it can get. And if we've got people with great followings, they're amped about HBAR, sharing quality information, it's like, who cares? I say you should be supporting those people. And as it works its way up, we talk about Joe Rogan, and the setup here is really, again, bringing this back to karate combat. Tomorrow, Karate Combat on Thursday is having their big fight with a lot of different fighters, including May from HashPack. And then up the tiers, up the bill, you know, you've got major fighters. I think someone else fighting in Karate Combat is one of the other influencer type people is Billy McFarlane or whatever his name is, the Firefest guy. So there's a lot of, the memes are going to be crazy. It's the same as the BitBoy kind of stuff. But the kind of like curveball that's happened that I think has got a lot of people excited has been seeing the Karate Combat team and representatives from Karate Combat on Joe Rogan, interfacing with Joe Rogan, also other influencers involved with Karate Combat doing those same things. And what this has ended up, the result of this is like, if we really boil it down, it's the Hedera logo appearing on the Joe Rogan podcast, which is cool. But he's also going to be at the Karate Combat event tomorrow. And nobody kind of knew this. And yesterday it kind of broke out, and I want to share a clip and then we'll kind of chat about it. But here is the clip from the Joe Rogan show, and listen because you'll hear it here. But let's listen to this.
So this is the setup. And this is in Karate Combat, which is, by the way, in Austin this Thursday. I'm going to go down and check that out.
Oh, man,
so like show. This, like when he posted his arm down, I'm like, oh.
Right. So did you catch that? Right. It's that part there. Here, I'll pull it up one more time.
By the way, in Austin this Thursday. I'm going to go down and check that out.
Oh, man,
so like show. This, like when he posted his arm.
Right. So it's like, I'm going to go down. I'm going to check that out. Joe Rogan is going to be at Karate Combat tomorrow at Consensus, right? He's going to be there and he's going to be checking it out. And what that means is that he's going to be learning about the platform, about Karate Combat. You know, we know Joe Rogan is not like anti-crypto and all that kind of stuff. So it's going to be very interesting to see, because these types of things are really what makes the difference. And shout out to the Karate Combat team, that whole project. Their strategy and what they're doing has really been incredible, especially with the influencer fights. And again, sometimes it's that stuff that people can, wave off and kind of be like, oh, it's just, who cares about BitBoy or whatever. But it's like this stuff grabs eyeballs. People are stoked about it. They're putting resources behind it. It is what it is. So Joe Rogan going to Karate Combat. Joe Rogan will be, within feet of the Hedera logo. And I mean, to be fair, I know people are maybe watching this episode from other ecosystems and being like, Jesus Christ, like here's this HBAR barbarian going nuts over nothing. Sure, maybe Joe Rogan is not involved in Aware, but will he be? Right? He's going to be closer to Hedera than he's ever been. And all it really takes, like, to be honest, and just to kind of put you on the inside of this, is like, all it takes is for somebody at Karate Combat or somebody affiliated with Karate Combat or someone stoked about Karate Combat that Joe Rogan knows and trusts and all that kind of stuff to kind of be like, hey, this Hedera thing is, by the way, like this Hedera thing's crazy. Like Lehman Barrett is like a crazy genius. You should have him on the show or something. Like, not to say that's going to happen, but that's how this stuff does happen. If it does, doesn't go through a process. It's very organic. And what I would say is, it would be very hard to see nothing come of this. It would be very hard to see nothing come of this. And at the very worst, Joe Rogan really gets into Karate Combat and not Hedera. And at that point, it's like, well, that's just a huge success for a project on Hedera. So it's hard to see the downsides of it. I mean, but Joe Rogan going to their Karate Combat fight, that's going to be crazy. And I'm going to be tuning into it. And maybe there's going to be some crazy, memes from his appearance there. And sounds like it's the first one he's been to, so it'd be very interesting. And what we'll do is we're going to talk about, let me see here. We're going to talk about BankSocial. Let's talk about BankSocial. They put out a pretty interesting and exciting update, announcement, whatever you want to call it, press release. I actually have to be honest too. Shout out to the BankSocial team. This press release is actually really good. I know this is kind of like lame to be like, wow, this is a great press release, but no, it's hard to do press releases. This is a really good one. Very clear, very easy to understand. And essentially, quick refresher on BankSocial. I've had John on the show. John, if you're watching, call into the show, hashgraph.news/call. BankSocial teaming up with credit unions, allowing people to become a member of a credit union and have a digital wallet where they can store both their, fiat currency, also their Bitcoin, their HBAR, whatever it may be, in one wallet. Maybe take out a loan and use their HBAR as collateral, whatever it might be. And also, too, real-time payments, speed, all these different types of things. So just think about like rethinking the banking ecosystem. And the reason BankSocial is going after credit unions is it appears as though credit unions are kind of already set up as, the CEO of BankSocial, John Wingate, says, analog DeFi, right? These kinds of independent entities that connect with each other. And it's not some big giant institution, some big bank or something. It's this decentralized group, if you want to call it that. And so what's the big announcement with BankSocial? So they put out this press release. BankSocial breaks the cost barrier for banking payment solutions, commercially launches first fully cloud native payments for credit unions. So essentially what this is BankSocial being kind of like, wow, we got some great technology that leverages Hedera that credit unions are going to want to integrate with, but we have to make it easy for them to integrate with this stuff. And so there's a quote here from John, but he basically says the result is broad availability of instant payments for even the smallest banks and credit unions, compatible with existing digital banking and core solutions. So that's really what this is this is the adapter that allows these smaller banks and credit unions to plug into this technology, leveraging Hedera. And it's really exciting stuff because, again, they've launched this fully cloud native implementation to connect to the real-time payment network from the clearinghouse. And they're combining Google Cloud, IBM MQ, and Hedera capabilities. So partnerships are in full swing right now. And yeah, we got a comment here from Paul. If BSL allows direct deposit, that'd be killer. That's another thing that BankSocial talks about is like actually acquiring, purchasing crypto, like those types of things. Like imagine if you could just do that at your bank, right? So this is the other side to stuff, right? We talk about, mass adoption and ETFs and BlackRock and all these types of things, right? And the waves of impact they're going to have on the industry. But when we look at the other side of it from the user perspective, right, from the user experience, it's very different, right? We start to talk about like, how do I buy crypto? How do I access it? How does it connect to my bank, right? So these types of initiatives address kind of that other side. And a quick example of this announcement and kind of why it's significant is, and again, as an example, with this new capability is a credit union could integrate BankSocial's platform with their existing system, right? That's really important as it's not really going to require banks to retool internally and leverage the Hedera network's capabilities. So this integration allows credit unions and smaller banks to offer real-time payments and digital wallets, providing members with instant and secure transactions. They gain access to, the mobile app, multi-currency support, seamless fund transfers, digital identity management, tools for managing both traditional and digital assets. So the whole idea is manage all your finances from one app. So the headline here is this is now very easy and accessible for banks and credit unions to dive into, and it's been good to see what BankSocial is working on. So shout out to BankSocial. Always love keeping up with that. If anyone listening has any kind of insights or kind of cool stuff about any of the stories we're talking about, leave a comment. This was also interesting. Again, as we talk about regulations, rules, all these different types of things, we were just talking to Patches about the tweet from Brady regarding the importance of getting community nodes online to decentralize the ecosystem. Patches also brought up a great point, which was a lot of it comes down to how the proxies to the network are handled. Because as we recall, when there was that major hack on Hedera over a year ago, March something last year, right, there was that exploit where I think it was like $600,000 was stolen from Pangolin and whatever. Like there's a whole thing about it. But basically, what Hedera was able to do was instead of shutting down the network, they were able to shut down the proxies, which meant that the network functioned normally, but nobody could submit a transaction to the network from the outside. And I mean, that was a very extreme measure ultimately that I think was the right decision. But the issue is, based off of, this information that like I was talking about, or not this information, sorry, the other post that I share with Patches, that Brady referred to, which was kind of the Howey test of like, you can't have admin control over a network. It has to be decentralized. Like that hack in Hedera, you could classify in that case, Hedera having admin control over the network because they were able to shut down proxies. So nuanced stuff, but worth mentioning. But on the flip side of it, like what about Hedera makes it more resilient to some of these regulations and some of the risk that maybe comes along with those. And this was a post shared by Parabolic HBAR, Sivo, legendary community member. And what he's referencing here is the news that the European Union declares maximum extractable value as a clear example of illegal market abuse under the upcoming MiCA rules. So MiCA is the European regulatory package that will kind of dictate the treatment of crypto in Europe. And so if they've determined that MEV is this much of a risk to the market, that's really important. And when you look at the networks out there, every crypto network out there, with the exception of maybe, I don't know how many others, but they all have maximum extractable value, and they kind of treat it as a feature, which is strange because the whole purpose of DLT, the whole purpose of crypto is fair ordering of transactions, right? Ensuring that nobody gets favor when a transaction comes to consensus by the network. So that is something that is is definitely an obstacle for other networks having MEV. But what's interesting, and what Sivo very well points out, is Hedera solved this, and what that means is there actually isn't maximum extractable value on Hedera. It just isn't a component of the network. It isn't something that's possible strictly because of how the network's architected. And Brady, at the time he was at Swirlds, and he did a post about this. And it's a key part of Hedera. And again, if this is really a make or break thing from a regulatory standpoint for these networks, then Hedera is in really good shape because Hedera just does not have MEV. And it can be argued again, MEV can exist on a layer 2 or particular application or whatever. That's not what this is about. What this is about is at the protocol layer, at the layer 1, is there maximum extractable value? On Hedera, there's not. So that's very interesting stuff. Let me see here. One thing that was interesting, I had a quick conversation about this with a few people. I don't know the significance of this, but it is very interesting. So, and again, it's not quite clear exactly what this is. It's a little bit out of my wheelhouse technically, but there is a GitHub merge that's occurred, and this is introducing a benchmark for reconnecting 500,000 nodes. So essentially what this is about is laying out the foundations to start testing what it would look like to reconnect 500,000 nodes, right? And for people unfamiliar in a decentralized network, or even the current state of Hedera, right? Not saying it's not decentralized, but with these governing council nodes, what would happen if, for example, 2 of the nodes went down, right? As maybe a node has been brought offline for service or whatever it may be, reconnecting a node requires that consensus node to like catch up with everything and get to the proper state of the network before it can start processing transactions. So it's a process that happens. And what this tells me is Swirlds Labs and Hedera is really starting to think about, okay, if we do have community nodes coming online early next year, what that means is that in Hedera's future, you're going to have these situations on the Hedera network as a whole where you may have thousands of nodes or hundreds of thousands of nodes or millions of nodes. And what would happen if, for example, you had 250,000 nodes go down and have to reconnect? What does that look like? And so that's a very interesting question. And it's very interesting to see that question being asked. And that's what this tells me is Hedera, Swirlds Labs, the network is starting to ask the question of what does it look like if this happens? And that's very exciting to see. So again, not exactly sure what it means or what it could equate to. All I can put together in my mind is it's very clear that the steps are being put in place to move forward towards community nodes, which we need to have sooner rather than later. It's a key criticism of the network. And I know the main argument against community nodes is it's not something that's cost effective. It does cost, tens of thousands of dollars per year to run a community node and all these different types of things. But like can we just get something going? I mean, we subsidize Atma with, tens of millions of HBAR. It's like, can we subsidize a community node? Can we do these types of things? I hope so. I hope we can get some stuff online. So now something else that was very, very, very interesting, and I do have a clip to share on this, but this is about SEALSQ. And a lot of people have been talking about SEALSQ and the ecosystem now. I started talking about them on the show late last year, really after not having a super clear idea of like what they do or what it's about or really anything. Because to me, some of the press releases early on were very strange. They were using terms like, low Earth orbit, Internet of Things, battlefield, or all these different things. And it just felt very far out to me. It felt very abstract. It was too much to process. There was like SpaceX and machine to machine economies and blah, blah. It was so much being thrown at me. And it was like, well, where did they come from? What's going on? So it took me a while. And I think it took the whole community a while to kind of really grapple with what is SEALSQ? What is all this stuff? What does it mean for Hedera? And what it's turned out to be for me is something that we've actually been looking for a long time. A concept that people in this ecosystem talk about a lot is, enterprise takes a long time and you got to be patient and all these different types of things. So SEALSQ is a company that's also, I believe, a subsidiary of WiseKey, which is WiseKey is a massive company. We've talked about them on the show. Everyone's seen the selfie that the CEO of WiseKey did with Elon Musk, all those kinds of things. Big company using Hedera, building on Hedera. And when we look at the kind of mantra that the Hedera ecosystem will kind of repeat, which is like, these things take time. Enterprise moves slow, yada, yada, yada. Just wait until they do their proof of concept or this or that. And this is, I think, what this use case is, right? Because what SEALSQ is all about is leveraging microchips in different devices, in millions and billions of devices around the world. And through leveraging satellites, allow all those devices to connect with each other and do things such as share information or validate whether they're authentic or genuine or pay each other for different things. And it took a while to kind of like distill that in my mind because it is pretty crazy, right? Like if you were to say to somebody, like if you were to say to me like last year or 2 years ago in the Hedera ecosystem, like, yeah, we're going to have, satellites launched by SpaceX that are going to enable billions of internet connected devices to pay each other using a token on Hedera that you can buy on Saucer Swap. I'd be like, what are you talking about? Like, it sounds nuts. And that's kind of been my attitude. But after kind of seeing this play out, it's like, wow, WiseKey is a pretty, established company that's listed on the NASDAQ. I think they're the second Swiss tech company listed on the NASDAQ. They have already minted an NFT in space. They work with major brands. And the key here is that we're talking about all these connected devices. And it's like, well, the first step to that obviously is like, you have to get your chips into all these devices. That's going to be a huge hurdle. And what really excites me about this use case is, they're already done that part. SEALSQ's chips have been used in hundreds of millions of devices for years and years and years and years. And that's really exciting because it already shows how far along this is. And that to me is what gets me excited about this. And so SEALSQ, obviously lots of stuff going on, different verticals, very enterprise, but we see some of the partners they have, Cisco, Siemens. It's like, okay, very interesting. And recently, the CEO, Carlos, the CEO and founder of WiseSat and SEALSQ, did an interview with the HBAR Bull. It was really good. A couple key insights for me was understanding the problem here is like, there are going to be trillions of devices, right? Trillions of things connected to the internet. And this raises a lot of like privacy and security concerns, right? Like, let's say you've got your security cameras in your home, or a health device, or your doorbell, or your toaster, like who knows, connected to the internet. Well, that obviously raises privacy and security concerns, because it's like, who has access to that? Can someone hack into my cameras? All these different types of things. This is that interconnected mesh, that network that would allow new security measures to be taken, because all of these devices in this connected world leveraging Hedera, all of these billions and trillions of devices would have their own digital identity, or passport or birth certificate on Hedera. So for example, if you wanted to, plug your phone into something, it would be able to look it up and see if that item was safe. It would be able to look it up immutably on Hedera to see. And tracking and tracing all of these devices through these satellites with the throughput of Hedera, you really start to go, okay, this sounds very similar now to a lot of the different things we've been talking about, with DPIN and all these different types of things. So that's fascinating. And they are, SEALSQ is working with SpaceX to launch their satellites into space, because launching satellites now is much more cost effective. Years ago it was $20 million to do it. Now it's, $250,000. So they already have 17 in orbit. And that's what their goal is. Get all these devices connected and create the machine to machine economy. And this is where it really resonated for me, which was like, there are billions of people in the world that can participate in the marketplace. There's trillions of devices. And so you really think about that. And some of the examples that Carlos gives is like, on this interview with HBAR Bull, is like, what if your car paid another car for a better parking spot? Or what if your fridge needed a repair and it could purchase that repair? Or other different things like devices being able to pay each other for different things. And you can think of all those different use cases. And then just beyond devices, like what if you have an AI model that needs to leverage a certain data set to train itself, being able to trade that value to get access to that machine to machine, or a system that wants to get data from cameras and authenticate that it's a secure connection and pay for that usage. So all sorts of different things. And specifically, he mentioned, he had met Carlos, the CEO of SEALSQ, mentioned that he did meet with Elon, and Elon is aware of what they're doing, and that it is like, the use case is blockchain in space, which is very, appealing to a lot of people, and made it very clear that they will have a token that will be available to people, investors, right, including you and me, for the SEALSQ token. Yeah, I think it's called like Seal Coin or something. That'll be made available. And he said specifically, Hedera will be very involved in the token launch. So that stuff gets me really excited. And this to me feels like an enterprise use case that aligns with a lot of what we've seen in the ecosystem. And what I'll do real quick is I'll share a video from the HBAR Bull show. This is a fantastic little clip that kind of just paints a future picture of what the pathway for this use case looks like. And again, shout out to HBAR Bull for this, but let's take a look at this clip. This is very, very cool.
But I know that you're also targeting those smart homes, autonomous vehicles, other hardware. Do you have any deals with manufacturers to install these transactional Internet of Things sensors?
Yeah. I mean, we are a listed company, just giving you public information. For instance, Cisco routers, Cisco Wi-Fi routers are already secured by us. So 100 million chips have been installing Cisco routers. Cisco routers is what you put in the middle of infrastructure, network infrastructure. So everything connects to the router, right? If the router is secured by the chip, then the satellite connection can facilitate the communications of the router. We have company like Medtronic. Medtronic is an American company that develops medical devices. Then you assess your health at home, and you send those devices data and collecting from you personally from your health to the hospital or to your doctor or to an emergency situation, that those devices are secured by your chips. Or you have Parrot. Parrot is a very famous drone company, one of the leading drones company. They use our chips to secure the drone communication with the control center. So make sure that the drone can only be piloted by one person and no interception can happen there. So we are doing that. And actually we are
So, I mean, that right there is, you know, when you look at those different kind of use cases and those different examples that Carlos was giving, it's like, it's pretty clear that many of those are very similar to some of the other things that we've seen, like from Neuron, for example, or Acor, for example, from the health space, or, you know, all those different types of things. It's very clear that there are very attractive things about Hedera for these industries. And it's pretty clear again that identity is huge. Machine to machine payments are going to be very interesting to watch unfold. And this is a use case that I have to be honest, I was sleeping on SEALSQ, and no longer. And again, this it's weird because, you know, it's not a community project. Like, this is an enterprise project, and that's pretty cool. So we're going to be keeping up with SEALSQ. I promise you that. Maybe something goofy we'll switch to real quick is I put out a tweet recently. I do this every month now because it was, you know, many people at Hedera, Swirlds Labs, the foundation, the association, et cetera, have all kind of stated generally that there's a high likelihood the governing council will be filled by the end of the year. And we have seen a governing council member added every month this year so far. So May 29th, we got 2 more days in May to keep that pace. Maybe we have if we were to keep that pace, we have a governing council member, you know, today or tomorrow. Obviously, I haven't seen anything pop up. So, you know, no notifications, no governing council members. But who could it be? I like to ask, and I know that right now the main focus for this ecosystem should be DeFi, it should be retail, it should be all these things. I agree 100%. But I also, you know, still like to have fun thinking about governing council members. Maybe it's a HBAR thing. I don't know. It's probably lame, but I don't care. So a few different things here that people shared that I thought was kind of cool. Jerry said Western Union, Captain Jack. Perfectability says FedEx. That would be very interesting. Edward says Disney. Coinman says Cyberdyne Systems. Yeah. You know, that says enough. Someone says, I would not be surprised if it was BlackRock. Now, to be honest, I really don't think that BlackRock is going to be a governing council member right now, at least, because it's weird. Like, it would be weird for BlackRock to be on the governing council because they would dwarf every other governing council member. It feels, and we do have quite a few financial institutions. So I don't know. Grelfian real estate. Sure. What else we got? Cisco, right? Some connections, right? We just saw the CEO of SEALSQ talking about satellites and blah, 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 and potentially Cisco leverage, right? So very interesting. Also NVIDIA, Microsoft, or SpaceX. We've heard those ones quite a few times. Out of all of these, I feel like Microsoft is the most likely based on connections and stuff like that, but who knows? Someone else says BlackRock. Weird. Who knows? Fidelity. Interesting. Definitely more likely than BlackRock, I feel. Citi, more likely than Fidelity. SpaceX, Microsoft, Amazon, Visa, Tesla. Of all these, I think the most likely would probably be Visa. But again, all of these, I have no idea. Tim Hortons. For people who don't know what Tim Hortons is a coffee shop in Canada, and I would say, let's get Tim Hortons. Here's the thing about Tim Hortons. It's the food vertical, right? Canadian Governing Council node. I'm 100% behind Tim Hortons being on the Governing Council. Tim Hortons is a horrible company, but anything we can do to get a Canadian node. OpenAI, no way. Apple, probably no way. Some verticals. I like this. Not specific companies, but verticals. NGOs, that would be good. Insurance, I think that's overdue. Automotive, I think that's also overdue. I think insurance and automotive. I think the most likely here is Hyundai. Hyundai is also already developing on Hedera. Yeah, NVIDIA, McDonald's. You get the drill. The usual suspects. Lego, Hyundai again. Skynet. Uh-oh. Netflix, Disney, Amazon. Jesus, Murphy. WWE. A little bit of competition for karate combat. NASA? Probably not. These were interesting. A little bit under the radar, right? So healthcare, biotech, pharma, right? Pfizer, Merck, GSK, like those might be interesting. We also know that Merck is also, I think, leveraging Hedera in some fashion. I don't know if I'm wrong. Leave a comment if I'm wrong. SpaceX, NVIDIA, Citi, man, a lot of comments on this. Uber, Samsung, MasterCard. Again, these types of ones, like what I would say is when it comes to predicting governing council members, generally what I do is I look at who is already using the network. We've been told over and over and over again by Hedera, by the foundation, that the number one piece of criteria to get on the governing council is to use the Hedera network. So that's what I do is I look at potential governing council members and I go, are they using the Hedera network and how much? And if they're using it a lot, then I would say probably a high likelihood. But again, we also have to recognize that the recent governing council members have not really been on my bingo card, right? Like Mondelez, Aberdeen, Dell Technologies, these different types of things, like these definitely have kind of felt like, whoa, Kofra, like all these different ones that kind of felt out of left field. So I would say overall, the highest likelihood, to be honest, is a governing council member that has not been predicted yet, to be honest. That's my prediction. Let me see here. Got some breadcrumbs. I haven't, to be honest, and this one, this makes me a little nervous, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. This headline came out on Cointelegraph. No shout out to Cointelegraph. Nomura Holdings, GMO Group, forms stablecoin research partnership in Japan. This is, of course, kind of right in the wheelhouse a little bit of what FSCO is doing. This is on their radar. This is like the jurisdiction and the vibe and what's going on, payments, all these different types of things, stablecoins. So there's some things that definitely feel connected in this way somehow, some form. But the issue here is right here, right? Nomura Holdings, this is a Hedera governing council member, right? And so this stablecoin project, it isn't explained or revealed what technology or what network is being used for this stablecoin. So why does this make me nervous? Well, there's a few reasons. Obviously, the first reason is this is, Cointelegraph. So maybe it is using Hedera and they're not saying it. I don't know. The other thing is, what if it isn't Hedera? That does make me nervous. And we don't really have a lot of clarity. Like when this news came out, it's pretty clear that folks at Hedera and Swirlds and what have you, like just aren't really in the loop in regards to this. There hasn't really been any kind of dialogue on this. And so for me, what I'm nervous about is and to be fair, right? It's very normal for governing council members to do things on other crypto networks. It's pretty standard. At this point, the community is pretty familiar with the fact that if a company is using Cardano, they're maybe also experimenting with XRP and Ethereum. Like if somebody is leveraging Hedera, they're probably also experimenting on other types of things. But when we talk about governing council members, there can sometimes be a little bit more of a sting. And also when we talk about governing council members doing specifically stable coins, there might be a little more of a sting because, as we know, one of Hedera's flagship offerings is the Stablecoin Studio. So what makes me nervous is, what if we find out that this use case does not use Hedera, does not use Hedera stablecoin, and that Nomura Holdings, the Hedera governing council member, is using a different network such as Ethereum or Cardano or XRP or Algorand or whatever to launch their stablecoin. It'd be very, like, I think that would be kind of weird. And I think that might send some weird signals. So I want to learn more about this one right here. I want to see what's kind of going on. But I just want to share that, you know, I'm nervous. I want to see what's happening. But on the topic of Cointelegraph, we actually, this was an absolute shock. This was some of the most shocking thing. This is one of the most shocking things I've seen in this space so far. We saw a Cointelegraph piece that mentioned Hedera. CoinDesk. Well, still, CoinDesk is one of those notorious crypto press outlets that does not mention Hedera. And what I did was I did Command F and search for Hedera, and my heart almost stopped. I almost fell on the floor when I saw this. Right there, as you can see, Hedera has been mentioned in this article, right? About how blockchain is reshaping supply chains beyond finance, right? They talk about Melendez. They talk about Oreo, Ritz, Cliff Bar. They talk about these things. I couldn't believe it. And that was great to see. So I guess maybe no shout out to Cointelegraph, very small shout out to CoinDesk. I will say that. Also to, just again, on the topic of this, this was funny to see, but again, I talked about this with Brady. He stopped by and called into the show last week, but one of the topics that we've been talking about on the show over and over again is like these charts that get posted of like, you know, here's the top 10 transaction crypto networks, all these kinds of things. And Hedera is maybe missing from the list or whatever it might be. And I think that's tough because, as we've learned, sometimes it's not just them overlooking Hedera. It's also maybe the data source that the journalist is using, it's not integrated with Hedera. So Hedera is falling short on data availability for crypto journalists because Hedera is not inside of certain platforms the journalists are using, whatever you might want to chalk it up to. And so it was funny to see Charles, the president of Hedera, share a post, which has now been deleted, that kind of highlighted this and kind of was like, how is any of this an L1 record when Hedera regularly hits these figures with live users, not gamified testing, and has done multiples more in some 24-hour periods? Weird math, my brothers. And this was obviously a post originally that was from one of these outlets that was sharing a record that had been broken, and it was a record that had already been broken every day by Hedera. And that was frustrating to see as well. And the president of Hedera obviously, you know, chiming in here. And it's like, again, a part of me is kind of like, well, how much of this is on Hedera? How much of this is on the journalists? I'd say that mostly it's very clear that there's a concerted effort to, you know, stifle awareness about Hedera. And Hedera is not alone in this. There are other crypto networks that have experienced this type of treatment from the press. So it's not abnormal. But also how much of this is on Hedera, right? I do think that at the same time, Hedera, the foundation, whomever can continue doing the work to more quickly make Hedera data available in the tools that crypto journalists are using. Because if these crypto journalists go to make a story of the top 10 networks or a record-breaking thing or whatever, they go to use this tool to search the networks, and Hedera isn't integrated, they're not going to see Hedera. It's not going to get included in the piece. So that's just an interesting observation. But I mean, it's good to see the president of Hedera in the mix, standing up for the network. It's good to see. We haven't seen a lot of that in the past. So big shout out to Charles. A big shout out to Charles. No shout out to Cointelegraph, small shout out to CoinDesk, big shout out to Charles. In that order, respectively. Now, we've talked about all the news. We had a conversation with Patches from Consensus. Pretty clear that the tides have changed. We are in a bull market, or we've all agreed that we are, and vibes are changing and it's getting exciting. And what that means is, you know, clearly we're seeing, despite how you read the data, but clearly the data and analytics are showing that, developers are coming to Hedera, new things are getting built on Hedera, and also substantial updates are being made to Hedera, right? The modularization of all the services, these big rewrites of the architecture of the network, all these different types of things are really important. And one thing that has been on my mind, I'm going to probably talk about it a little more on the show, but I just kind of wanted to like just share a thought that I had, I just realized I'm wearing my Hashgraph hoodie today. It's laundry day, so I don't have very much clothes, if anyone's familiar. Yeah, so anyways, funny, but so when we talk about the network and we talk about Hedera and all these different types of things, one topic that I don't think we talk about enough, a problem that I don't think we all get attached to enough, a theme that maybe is not top of mind for people that should be, is the correlation between the attention something receives in this industry and the support that it gets. And to me, I found the rule to be, and I'll maybe use the Hedera ecosystem as an example, is if something gets talked about a lot, it receives more support, right? If there's more awareness about an aspect of the network and the community understands why it's important and the value that it gives them, the more likely it is for that aspect of the network to receive support. And then on the other end of it, arguably important aspects of the network that the community may not know about or might not understand why they're important or how it impacts them, that lack of awareness translates to a lack of support. And we've seen this in different areas of the network. And what bums me out about this is one of my favorite things about Hedera is how unique it is as a network. And a common thing that we often talk about is, wow, Hedera has, low fixed fees, makes the network unique. Hedera is ABFT, makes the network unique. Hedera is carbon negative, makes the network unique. Hedera has, very fast time to finality. That makes it unique, puts it in the top 5% or whatever. And so it's these qualities about the network that we're very excited about. And we talk about these things quite a bit. And why I bring up my hoodie, this kind of ties it into it really well. But it's been very interesting for me to, for anyone that isn't aware, like I work at Hashgraph now, and Hashgraph is a mirror node service provider. So basically, we provide people data access to, you've heard probably maybe about mirror nodes or different things like that. And Hashgraph is like an infrastructure company working with a lot of the major names in the ecosystem. Little known fact, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but if you go to the Hedera homepage and you see the counter for transactions, that's data from Hashgraph. So it's very interesting because I think a lot of times that people hear about mirror nodes is when something breaks or something goes wrong. And this is kind of what I'm talking about is, if something gets attention, it gets support, right? If something doesn't get too much attention, it doesn't really get the support that it needs. And I think that mirror nodes fall in that category of they don't really get a lot of attention. The idea, the concept of a mirror node doesn't really get a lot of attention. It's not really a part of the conversation. It's not part of the Hedera meta. And it doesn't really get the support that it needs. And so the ramifications of that are there aren't very many providers, and it's not an easy business to be in. And I think that there are all sorts of different ways to deal with that. But I'm a big believer that yes, there are technology problems, and yes, there are different ways to solve these types of things. But I think for me, a lot of the times is just storytelling. And what I mean by that is a big revelation I had when I came to work at Hashgraph is I was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a new perspective on this network, right? I've pretty much been on the front facing side, the community side. Now working at an infrastructure company, I was like, hey, I'm going to, get a fresh perspective on the network or get a new angle or learn some new things. But what actually ended up happening for me is I ended up discovering the other half of the network, right? There's a whole other half of this network that I didn't really know about. And it might sound crazy, but and again, I don't want to talk your ear off about this today. I'll share some more on the show, later on, but on other episodes. But for me, what I'm trying to tell people is there's another half to the network that is crazy cool that we just don't talk about. And it solves a big problem. And it's very cool. And I think that's the part that's been missed. And what I'll explain really quickly, and my big moment with this is we all, like I said, we love things about Hedera that makes it unique, innovative, breakthrough things. There is something else about the Hedera network that is incredible, just as incredible as TPS and all these different types of things, ABFT, carbon negativity, the governing council, blah, 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 that I and many people just never really tapped into. And what it is it's actually how the Hedera network is designed at its core. And what I mean by this is when you have a crypto network, pretty much every crypto network out there, you've got nodes, right? That process transactions and allow you to get information from the network, right? So these nodes on the network have to be really good at processing transactions and storing transactions and all these different types of things. And what's unique about Hedera is in that kind of system where you have nodes that handle read and write, what Hedera decided to do, and again, this is very unique, Hedera decided to split those and say, instead of having one node type that writes transactions and reads transactions and is very good at writing and reading transactions, what if we made two different types of nodes? A node type that is excellent at writing transactions, consensus nodes, and a node type that is excellent at reading transactions, mirror nodes, and separate that. And what that is that at the core is the incredible scalability of Hedera, because not only is it just a super unique aspect about the network, but it's a big reason why the network is so performant. And it's such an exciting, cool part of the network. It's the other half of the network. And why I say that is a lot of the news stories I talk about on this show, a lot of the things we talk about in the ecosystem, it's about the right side of the network, right? The writing transactions side, the consensus nodes. We talk about the governing council, all the transactions being written to the network. We talk about all the action happening, all the use cases being built, who's putting things into the network. That's all very, very, very exciting. But when a transaction is written to the network, where does it go? We've got 50 billion transactions, right? That's dozens of terabytes of information. That's bigger than any other network out there. The amount of information Hedera generates is massive. And so it's a whole other side to this network. A whole other half of this network is the read side. It's, okay, so we've got this massive amount of valuable information, our collective shared story over time. And there's so many valuable things that you can get from that. And so maybe a wallet needs to use it to display your balance for your account, or maybe you want to find out how many NFTs were minted today or whatever. But then there's so many other complex type of things that you can do. Reading the network, asking Hedera questions and getting answers is a massive part of what this is all about, right? It's half of what this is all about. An application, half of what the application does is write things to the network, but the other half is reading things from the network. And because of a lack of attention and understanding on the read side of the network, on the mirror node side of the network, that hasn't received the support. That whole half of the network hasn't received the attention and support that it needs to be as strong as it can be. And it's led to problems. And we can try to make it better and faster and cooler and more features, but it doesn't matter because we have to talk about it. And I didn't know about it. It took me working for a company to understand this. And what that tells me is there's a huge, exciting, story, a captivating adventure that we can all take together to the other side of the Hedera network, where there's so much cool stuff and so many cool possibilities that I'm really excited about. And sure, it's not about writing things to the network. It doesn't really relate to a lot of the things that we talk about, but it makes it all possible. And it's a very unique type of thing. And it's important to know about, because as developers come into this ecosystem, it can be a bit of a learning curve maybe, and all these different types of things. So in summary, it's just, and I know I've kind of rambled here a bit, but I'm very passionate and excited about this other half of the network, right? I love and talk about the right side of the Hedera network, writing transactions to it, all these exciting things being put into the network. It's so exciting. It's what we talk about. But now we're at the phase where we've got to start really reading the network and getting information from it, getting these insights from it, solving so many of these problems that we have, like we talk about with the crypto press, a lack of information, all these types of things. The information is there. You know, companies like Hashgraph have that information. We're building tools to make it easy to get it. And this is what we've got to be talking about. We have to walk and chew gum at the same time. There is a different type of conversation that has to happen in this ecosystem, because the network is just so different and unique and cool. Hedera does not have one node type processing, read and write transactions. It does not have layers above it to help sort through that information. At the protocol layer, Hedera has separate node types for reading and writing information. It's a game changer. It's breakthrough in DLT. It's totally unique and it's totally exciting. And we just don't talk about it a ton. So I would just say I'm going to be sharing some stuff. Hashgraph will be sharing some stuff, but check it out. And I don't want to talk about like the project I work for, the company I work for on the show. I like to be objective and stuff, but for me, it's just working at Hashgraph, learning about this other side of the network, this whole other half of the network, just got me so inspired, so energized. It was one of those dreams that you have where you like realize there's a hidden room in your house or something. It felt like there was a hidden house in my house. It was just so cool. So I just feel like there's so much more to explore together that we haven't really checked out. I'm going to be talking about it on the show. The read side of the network, the other side of Hedera, the other half of the story. We got to play catch up. We got to get it going. We got to have that stuff working properly. But anyways, ramble over. That's what I was excited about. I have been very excited about it recently, been learning a lot, and I want to pass along that info to everybody out there. So, yeah, anyways, we talked about it a lot today. Jeez. I mean, we talked about, growth of the ecosystem. We had patches on from Swirlds Labs, consensus is popping, crypto bills are passing, the pack token drop went well. SEALSQ is, satellite machine to machine, Hedera rumors, Joe Rogan, going to the karate combat event tomorrow at Consensus to see May fight and all these types of stuff, like just big stuff. It's like Patches said, right? It's so crazy to see so many big news items happen. And, it feels like there's just too much happening. And before I end the show really quick, we have a quick call in, live on the scene. Grelf, how's it going? It's great to have you back on the show, live. What do things look like from your end? What's new? What's going on? Would love to hear your insights.
Well, it's been a tough time for me.
Really, what's going on?
Well, I don't know if you saw, but the HBAR Foundation rejected my request for a giraffe.
Jesus, Murphy.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, what does this mean for the ecosystem? Because to be honest, it does feel like things are really picking up a huge amount of steam. It's unfortunate to have such a massive setback like this. Where do we go from here? What do we do?
Well, here's the facts. We still need somebody to look up to, right? I think now especially the Hedera community needs someone to look up to. So even though the HBAR Foundation and that guy that wrote me that email that totally wasn't just an auto reject email, even though they rejected my proposal for Operation Bertha, Bertha being the name of the giraffe we want. It's not over. It's not over. I shan't rest, and I mean that figuratively because I love a good nap, until we have our giraffe, until we have somebody that everybody in the Hedera community, unless they're like over 10 feet tall, can look up to.
So what you're saying is your perspective on this is the game isn't over. It's just begun. Like you're honestly, Grelf, that optimism, Gerbert, that optimism, that's really refreshing. I'm really happy to hear that. And so what can the community do to help make this happen? Because I think that collectively everybody wants Project Bertha to succeed. Everyone's looking up and they don't see anything. So what can we do?
Well, I would say stay tuned. I'm in contacts with a few different projects who are interested in helping out with Operation Bertha. If you are a big project on Hedera and you're interested in joining the brain trust, as it were, about Operation Bertha / Operation Giraffe / it's not just for me, guys. I'm not going to ride it. I'm totally not going to ride it. Anyway, if you're interested in joining said coalition, said brain trust, reach out to me. You know, my DMs are open. I think I haven't looked at the settings in a while.
So you're looking for reinforcements. You're looking to you're sounding the horn for the HBAR. You're calling reinforcements because this is too important of an initiative for this ecosystem.
We've got to have it.
Yeah, and I would impress upon the HBAR Foundation maybe to take a second look.
True.
Maybe to dive in a little further, because I really think that, there's been a lot of news, but I don't want to put too much pressure on this, but it does feel like this is a really make or break thing for the ecosystem, to be honest.
Do you think I should submit another application?
Yeah. 100%.
Really?
Yeah. I think you should submit another application. And I think that what you should do, is now were you able to attach a photo of Bertha or the giraffe that the community would be adopting? Because maybe if they see a photo, that might tug on the heartstrings a little bit.
I don't know how to pick a specific giraffe. They all look pretty similar. I was thinking whatever giraffe we got, even if its name was like Crumbles or Oreo or something, we would just rename it Bertha, because it's a better name. Gotcha.
And I think that you got to tug on the heartstrings a little bit. I think that that's really the pathway forward here, is like, if you can't get the wallet, you get the heart, and that's really where a giraffe can come in. So I say put in another application. I say don't give up. And the coalition, it sounds like, is growing in strength and is behind you. So
we've got 2 people in it.
Oh, very good. I mean,
besides me. So that's I think that's 3 people.
Wow. Okay. So it's an unstoppable force. We can.
Yeah, it's like 1/4 of Hedera's user base.
Pretty. Yeah, and I mean, Grelf, your tireless dedication to the ecosystem, and I say tireless because you do take the reasonable amount of naps, probably getting around 10, 15 hours of sleep every night. It's critical. But appreciate the update. I actually would encourage you to call into the show when you do have updates regarding the Bertha initiative, because we need to stay in the loop on this kind of stuff. So I really appreciate it.
Right. So join the Bertha initiative. If you're a big project, you want to help out with some weird draft stuff, me and a few other people. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you who they are, but they're bigger people in the community. Do
you mean they're also very tall, or what do you mean?
Oh, no, not literally. I think they're all shorties. Some of them are Canadian.
Okay.
Everyone knows Canadians are very, very short. They're teeny tiny people.
It's not true.
A lot of people think I'm short. They think I'm like the size of a Smurf or something, but I'm 5'5", baby.
Yeah. I mean, Canadians being short is a pretty like overplayed trope, to be honest. It's not a true thing, but despite that, Grelf, I really appreciate you calling in with this info, and I think that this is going to work. I think if we stay behind it, we don't give up. I think it's going to work. So really appreciate it. Was there anything else you wanted to shout out or anything before I close off the show here?
I'm like the finalist in the last vote thing for that vote thing that everybody's been spamming every single person about. So vote for me. Don't vote for HashPack. What have they done for you? And don't think of all the things they've done for you either. Just don't think of those and vote for me instead.
Okay. Vote for Grelf. A vote for Grelf is a vote for Bertha. I'm behind you, Grelf. Take care. Appreciate you. Keep us updated and keep us in the loop.
Of course. Anytime.
All right. It's a pleasure to have Grelf always. And it's a good thing to hear that, even though the Bertha initiative is stalled, it's not over, and may in fact just be the beginning. So, geez, what an episode. Talked about so much, and I think that the key takeaway here this week is, we really have to focus on, not getting too hung up on the type of exposure we're getting and not getting too hung up on the nuance. I talk about this quite a bit, but it's really easy to get sucked into details, sucked into the minutia, sucked into nuance. When in reality, what's going to bring us success is broad strokes. And if you see an influencer saying Hedera is going to go to $10, don't get pissed off. Don't try and be like, it's not going to, it's not possible. There's an energy happening in this ecosystem right now. And the worst thing that Hedera could do, the worst thing that our community could do is try to slow it down or whatever. It's like in the crypto space, in the technology industry, chaos can be a positive thing. Embrace it if you can. And there's a wave coming. Ride the wave. Don't swim against it. Think big. And I would say that get used to a lot of things happening. Like Patches was saying, there is an aspect to this of, things happen all at once. So I think that that's exactly it. And I think, Gerbert hits the nail on the head here, which is be positive about Hedera if you're part of the community and hold HBAR. It's literally that simple. And, I think that at the same time, as I do on the show, it's very fair to point out things that could be improved or share legitimate criticisms or stuff like that. I think those types of things are healthy to have. But what we shouldn't be doing is, pouring water on anybody's parade or someone that's excited about it being, saying like, oh, you're wrong or something. Let's encourage the excitement. Let's encourage the vibes. Let's keep things going. Appreciate everybody tuning in, supporters of the show. A quick reminder, the show is available on X and YouTube live as it is right now every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's a vibe. And the recording is also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those kinds of things. So check it out. Hashgraph.news. Appreciate everybody. Episode 127 in the can. Hello, future. Goodbye, past.
Thanks for listening to the Hashgraph Enthusiast Show, hosted by Brandon Davenport.
Listen to past episodes and support the show at itsbrandond.com/HBAR.